Okay, I'm still in this book right here, and this is volume 2, and we're at part 4, story 2, Israel's traffic laws. Excuse me for scratching my ear, but it's there for a second. Okay, after God had spoken from Sinai, telling the children of Israel his 10 golden rules of life, Moses gave them many other laws so that they could live together peacefully in the camp. Just as we have traffic laws today telling us how fast we may drive on the highway, what we must do when we're in school, when a school bus stop, driving down the highway, what we must do when a school bus stops, how far we must keep behind a fire engine, and what must be done when one car bumps into another. So Israel was given all sorts of regulations about how they were to act towards one another. Interesting allegory. No, big words. Unlike God's 10 commandments, which, of course, never change and apply to everybody in all the world, Israel's traffic laws are today mostly out of date. Yet, yet they were very important at that time. For these people had been living as slaves for many, many years and did not know how to behave as free women and men. Some of them even believed in slavery. They didn't know any better, which is true. And that's pretty much what's going on now. But I digress. Let me get back to the story. God had to educate them, and so through Moses, he taught them first one lesson, then another. He didn't. He couldn't change. He couldn't change their thinking all at once, so he did it little by little. For instance, knowing how some of them thought about slavery, he gave orders through Moses that if anyone bought a slave, then after 6 years of service, the slave should go out free for nothing. That's a start, at least, towards full freedom. Okay, so they can work for 6 years as a slave, but then after the seventh, he can let go. Okay, there were other interesting laws like this. If two men got in a fight and one struck the other with his fist or a stone and hurt him so badly that he had to go to bed, then the one who struck the blow had to cause the other man to be thoroughly healed and pay for his loss of time. Ooh, that's interesting. That was very fair, and no doubt saved quite a number of fights. If a man did dig a pit and forgot to put a cover on it, and another man's ox, or there's that word, donkey, fell into it and was killed, then the man who dug the pit had to pay the other man the value of the dead animal. This also was very fair, don't you think? If a man put his cattle or sheep to feed in the neighbor's field when he had to give, okay, if a man put his cattle or sheep to feed in a neighbor's field, then he had to give that neighbor the best of his own field. Interesting. Okay. Okay. If one man if one man's ox hurt another man's ox so badly that it died, then the live ox had to be sold and the money divided. The dead ox was also divided, and so both parties were satisfied. So you had to die if you got a dead ox, you had to sell it, and then living ox, you had to sell it. Interesting. I didn't know most of these. Another thing, Moses told them that they were never to take a bribe, for he said a bribe makes people tell untruth. How true? Thou shalt not oppress a stranger was another very fine law, and the reason given up was, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye are strangers in the land of Egypt. Day after day, Moses tried to teach the people all these lessons in how to behave. No doubt they had many questions. Some asked him, "What shall we do in this case, and what shall we do in that?" Through the leaders of the thousands and the hundreds and the fifties and the tens, he tried to answer them and show them the right way. I suppose everybody didn't like what he told them. Some preferred to do as they had done before. Maybe some said, "Why should we bother about what he says?" But the leaders tried their best to enforce the new traffic laws, and gradually the people came to understand that obedience was the better way. But it must have been a great struggle. Then one day Moses called the leaders together and told them that God had asked him to come up to the mount again, bringing Joshua with him. Tarry ye here for us, he said, until we come again unto you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have any matters to do, let him come unto them. So he put Aaron and Hur in charge. And when I hear her, I think of Ben Hur. And we have an illustration, and it might be it's talking about the pit when the cow falls in, and this is the guy paying for the cow falling in. And let's see. Okay, and here's what this. And let's get back to the story. So Aaron and Hur were left in charge of the camp, while Moses and Joshua waved the leaders farewell and climbed slowly toward the summit of Sinai. And the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on top of the mount in eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses went up unto the midst of the cloud. As Moses and Joshua disappeared, Aaron and the others who were with him turned back towards the camp, wondering how long their leader would be away and what might happen to him up there with God. He had he had said he would return, but would he? How could any human being live in the midst of that devouring fire? What if he never came back? What would happen to all the people? How could they find their way to Canaan without him? It wasn't long before others of the camp began to ask the same questions. Then, as day succeeded day and there was no sign of Moses, everybody became more and more worried about him. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks went by, and still there were no word out of the cloud. He must be dead, they said. We had better return to Egypt. And they was really worried if they wanted to go back. And I think some of these never would, if I got my story right, they never was even in Egypt. They wasn't even born in Egypt. And that's what it looks like. Joshua and Moses going up the mountain. Okay, that's story two, part 4, story 2. Now I'm going to take a little break and we'll go to our next story here in just a bit.